Welcome back to But Why Though, the podcast where we talk about the things in pop culture that matter and ask the question, but why though? Today's episode, in honor of all things basketball. Is that how I pronounce it, guys? Basketball?
Close enough.
That's a great movie. I don't think that's how you pronounce it.
We are talking about the NBA and asking, but why though? As always, I'm your host, Kate, and I'm here with Adrian.
Hey, how's it going?
Matt.
Hello.
And our very special guest who is with us on the professional wrestling episode. And he was so good, we just had to have him back. Tim.
What's up? Thank you for having me yet again.
Well, we're happy you're here. So to start things off, let's go ahead and get our question going. And I will also like to preface this that I am not the one leading this episode. It will be split between Matt and Adrian because I know about the Spurs and that's about the extent. So that's my answer to what is your involvement with the NBA, your favorite team, and anything else that is relevance. Spurs. Talk amongst yourselves.
What about you, Matt?
My favorite team is the Heat. This was the obviously before D-Wade and LeBron were on the team. This was back when the Tim Hardaway, Alonzo Mourning, and Eddie Jones years.
And what relevance and what's your involvement? Like, have you given really extensive answers to trivia contests?
Yeah, I mean, basically when they bring me to trivia, the reason I'm there to answer sports questions, which happen to be NBA, and I can do pretty well at that. As far as relevance, the Heat suck now, so I haven't watched a lot.
They're not that bad. You guys almost made the playoffs.
Okay, we play in the East. That we just got to win like 25 games to get in.
True enough.
What about you, Adrian?
I started like really following basketball when I was in probably the start of middle school for me. Maybe before that. I don't know. I'm not sure when. My dad was a big basketball fan, so I remember like periodically watching basketball almost all my life. But like when I think I started physically watching it and following throughout the whole season was when I was, early teens probably, where I could actually have actual conversations about basketball. And every time I bring this up, I'm just not going to look at Tim. Because I don't have a favorite team. I just really like LeBron James.
Oh, God.
And no matter where he goes, I'm following.
And I'm about to throw up everywhere.
No matter where he goes. Because like when I was a kid, I loved the Pistons. I just loved the way they played. But then the Pistons, as most of us know, aren't very good anymore.
So
but when LeBron James...
I was going to say, I would say that about Tim Duncan, but, he kind of stayed with one team and then retired, so...
Kate, you're not going to get under my skin because you don't know basketball, so nothing you say is going to faze me. Sorry.
I see you, though. I see you.
Yeah, so, I follow the Cleveland LeBron Jameses.
LeBron
right
Jameses?
Yeah.
What about you, Tim?
All right, so I am a New York Knicks fan. Yes, they do exist. I hate them, but I love them at the same time. It's a weird relationship. So the reason why I started following basketball, I actually played it at a younger age before I actually started watching it. It was my cousin that made me start watching it. And the player I gravitated to, like in the around 2000, was actually Allen Iverson. I just loved the way he dribbled the ball. I would get all his sneakers when they came out, and they were like $20, $30 at the time. Now they're like $200. I wish I would have known that. But if I had to say I had a favorite player, it'd be Kobe Bryant. But I do not like the Lakers. It was weird because I would have to root for Kobe, but I did not want to root for the Lakers. But my love for Kobe was just so strong that, watching him win the titles, it was always good, and I grew up in New York, and him playing in LA made me stay up, 3 hours later than I was supposed to. And now here I am, trying to get ready for school the next day. It's 2:00 in the morning watching him playing basketball. So, but now I'm a super basketball nerd. I follow that. I'm like one of them, league passers that watch these insignificant games between Milwaukee and the Phoenix Suns that don't matter, but I just love the game so much that I watch them. But I still follow the Knicks. I love them. I want them to win, but I don't think it's gonna happen in my lifetime.
So, so I actually feel like I kind of need to like rephrase my Spurs stuff. So, like, some of my earliest pictures are me in like Spurs gear from my uncle, because he was obsessed. And so, like, my first game was a Timberwolves game. And then when I was little, I remember staying up and watching the Knicks and the Spurs with my dad, when the Knicks were, good. And then
50 years ago.
Yeah, and then I remember watching the rivalry between the Lakers and the Spurs. I remember specifically because there was this little boy in my Catholic school who always wore Lakers stuff, and I grew up in San Antonio, and he got so much hate. Like, if he wasn't like a giant kid, he probably would have got bullied just because of the Lakers stuff. But you mentioned teams I knew, but I guess, like, I represent, like, a different side, because, like, it's totally because I'm a San Antonio person that I love the Spurs. Like, I'm tied to the city, and, like, I'm kind of, like, the majority of it, but it's also just kind of, like, I'm tied to, like, I think the Spurs are genuinely good guys, except for Tony Parker. I still don't like him.
What's the beef with Tony?
He was a royal D-bag when he first got on the Spurs.
I could see that.
He was really bad. He was one of, like, so when all the Spurs were kind of like, we're San Antonians first, we are really a part of the community, we do community work, we talk to people, we talk to our fans. When Tony first came in, he was really, really arrogant. And it's changed a lot now. I think that the other guys are a lot better.
He's from France or Argentina?
France.
Not surprising.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm pretty sure because he was from France.
And he cheated on Eva Longoria, so, like, I'm just not going to be okay with him.
Hey, kind of like that one guy that Tim likes.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
She forgave him, so why should we be mad about it?
Oh, there are a
but
lot.
Fun fact on Tony Parker, did you know he has a rap song?
Yes, I did, actually. I totally did.
That song is amazing and featuring Fabulous. I used to watch it every day just to bother my Spurs friend. And I would show it to him, and he'd be like, can you please turn that off? And I'm like, but Tony Parker's rapping. Like, we have to listen.
All I know is if you want to see, as, like, I guess, like, an NBA team getting involved into, like, a city, free tacos and free coffee when the Spurs win in San Antonio. And that's one of the best things. I got free stuff all the time. Whatever. Don't look at me like that.
I'm going to shake my head on that one.
Essentially, I loved the Spurs when I was a kid. I now pretty much know Kawhi Leonard, and Matt gives me so much crap for it. But I'm still a Spurs fan.
I just feel weird because, like, my, I guess, first really memories of watching NBA involved, like, John Stockton and Karl Malone and Sean Kemp playing the Bulls. So I'm a little dated.
Because you're old.
And rooting for them. I actually really did like the Jazz for a while. I liked the Karl Malone and John Stockton combination.
So, as always, we're going to go into a brief history, and I'm going to turn it over to people that are obviously, more versed in the NBA things than me. So, Adrian, if you want to start off.
Yeah, so for the history, I didn't want to spend too much time on, like, the stuff that didn't matter, because we're going to cover a lot of this stuff in the But Why Those as we go through it. So Matt and Tim, feel free to jump in at really any point, just because, I left it really, really open for discussion. So basketball, as, like, I guess more or less as we know it now, the first game was played in 1891 in Springfield, Massachusetts. And the, I guess, quote-unquote creator of basketball would be attributed to Dr. James Naismith, who the Hall of Fame is named after to this day, if I'm not mistaken.
And the top college basketball award, I believe.
Yeah. Because he wanted to help his athletes be conditioned during the winter months. And this was literally basketball. Like, the basket and the bottom wasn't cut out yet. So, like, after every time they would score, they would have to get the ladder. The janitor would come in, take out the ball, and then they would tip it off again. So it was very basic when you're thinking about, like, the original game of basketball. Yeah, like, they basically play with soccer balls. It's very archaic.
Basically, they had soccer balls until they realized they couldn't dribble nor pass those.
Do you know what inspired it?
Well, I mean, I guess it would have to go back to... Well, I don't know. I didn't look too much into it just because I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole and then me spend 15 minutes talking about ancient basketball. But if you look at, like, ancient Latin civilizations, they had stuff...
The Maya with the...
Yeah, they had stuff that would go through ball, like through hoops. And I guess you can call that, like, technically basketball. But I didn't want to go too much into it.
Okay.
But yeah, we're on the same wavelength, Kate. Yeah,
okay.
we got it.
Boop, boop.
From there, we go into more or less kind of like the big creation of the National Basketball Association as we know it now. There was a whole bunch of mergers and like other associations, much as there is with basically any sporting organization. When Tim was here last time, we talked about it with the WWE episode, how there was a whole bunch of different organizations, and by the end of it, one of them won out, and we had one, and that's kind of how this goes too. So before the NBA is called, the NBA, it was called the
BAA.
Yeah, the BAA. So the acronyms are going to get stupid because they're all basically like the same three letters, just rearranged differently. So the BAA, the Basketball Association of America, and it's founded in 1946. This is interesting because regardless of the mergers and all of like the things that are absorbed into the NBA still officially has its history spawning from the Basketball Association of America. So all of like the original records and everything like that come from the Basketball Association of America, and not say like one of the other ones that was going on around that time, the American Basketball League, the ABL that was in the East, and the National Basketball League, the NBL, which was in the Midwest. So regardless of like those teams, some of those teams coming over, the NBA still recognizes the Basketball Association of America as their founding date and where it really gets going from the beginning. So as we move through the late 40s, we have basically, which can be seen as a merger, but the NBA doesn't really classify it as a merger in their history. They classify it as an expansion. So the Basketball Association of America, going into the 1948 to 1949 season, took 4 teams from the National Basketball League, which basically made the BAA the best option for athletes coming out of college to go pro. And then the next season after that, they took the remaining teams from the NBL, and to avoid legal issues, much like the WWE did, or the WWF at that time did in wrestling, they changed their name despite basically having the same leadership and front office, just to avoid like the legal issues there. And then we get the big merger that everyone who is big into basketball, like Tim and Matt, which is why I'm going to let them talk about this here in a second, is the big merger, and kind of like I like to think of it as like the Monday Night Wars of basketball with the National Basketball League and the American Basketball Association during the late 60s and into the mid 70s.
Think Will Ferrell and Tropical Thunder. Or not Tropic Thunder.
Yeah,
Tropical? No.
Semi-pro.
Huh? Semi-pro.
Semi-pro?
Well,
What?
they were the
Semi-pro.
tropics, my
Yeah.
bad.
Will Ferrell was...
Yeah.
He was in the tropics, my bad. I was thinking Tropical Thunder, tropics, whatever. They fought a bear in the movie.
So if you want to talk a little bit about it, Matt, Tim, about your thoughts on the merger and kind of like how it changed things, or its importance as the merger that people think about when they think about mergers.
I guess I'll go first. I really love this merger, I guess, because a few reasons. I guess one, there was an antitrust lawsuit that was actually involved between Oscar Robertson, who everybody knows is a great basketball player and Hall of Famer. He actually filed an antitrust lawsuit against the NBA because he wanted to keep both the ABA and the NBA as a competition to increase player salaries. And so by having 2 leagues, you basically increase salaries to get the best players and whatnot. And so while this lawsuit's going on, they're trying to merge this entire time. And it was so, I guess, bad and wrapped up between the lawsuits and everything that the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate actually had to write bills to try to get this lawsuit or this merger to help them get it done. And it actually took, I guess, 4 years, because this was in 1972 when they started. And I think the official merger is not till 1976 that this happened. When the merger happened, there was 6 teams from the ABA, and basically the NBA said, we'll take 4. Basically, that involved the Denver Nuggets, the San Antonio Spurs, the Indiana Pacers, and at the time, the New York Nets, which eventually became the, I guess, New Jersey, then Brooklyn Nets, the St. Louis Spirits, and the Kentucky... I'm not even sure what the Kentucky people were. Blue people.
I mean, the tropics weren't a thing? That wasn't a real
Unfortunately,
thing?
no. But it was based on this. The movie was kind of semi-based on this.
So
merger.
all I want to know, did a magical future child fall out of the sky? Because I'm slightly confused right now.
No. So there were 6 ABA teams, and the NBA happened to be the better, I guess, not necessarily product, I guess, at the time, but they had more money, I guess would say.
Product.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. It was a better...
I mean, the teams weren't that different.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't... The competition wasn't that much better in the NBA versus the ABA, right?
Exactly. That's what makes the whole WWF, WCW comparison such a good one. You know, WCW can be looked at as like the ABA at the time. They still had stars that the NBA wanted, one being Julius Erving, which, you know, AKA is Dr. J. That was a big deal for the NBA to able to implement him into their league. Because he was... Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you know exactly like how they got them? Because I actually looked this up, and it's actually a very interesting story. So the Nets, since the Knicks were already around, had to pay $4 million to get into this merger for the NBA. And so they actually offered Julius Erving to the Knicks. The Knicks said, no, we want the money. And so then they actually sold Julius Erving for $3 million to the Sixers, and then took the $3 million and then paid the Knicks. And that's how they got in the NBA.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
So also...
They sold them for $3 million.
So also for listeners out there, if you haven't guessed, there's a reason why Matt was our money guy only for the longest time, and he likes numbers. So... I was really excited to hear him talk about that part.
Well, that's not the best part. The best part is basically what happened, where basically the greatest financial deal in history ever occurred in this merger. So the St. Louis Spirits were not wanted, but they had a good roster, but they were supposed to fold. And so what the other ABA team did to them was they agreed to pay their owners, I guess it's the Salinas brothers, I believe that's how you pronounce their name. Sorry, man. They agreed to pay them $2.2 million up front. This is obviously back in the 70s, so it's a lot more money than what it is today. And 1/7 of all of their television revenue forever. Forever.
Wow.
Say in perpetuity.
In perpetuity would be the exact words, but forever. So the brothers of the owners, who are still technically owners and shareholders of this, get revenue from the Nuggets, the Spurs, the Pacers, and the Nets, who actually joined to this day. And as of 2013, they've made over $300 million by doing nothing but part of this deal. And
the American dream.
And then basically the NBA League Pass that you brought up.
All day.
Sorry, the NBA League Pass that you had brought up earlier, that was another subscription service that apparently was not really necessarily like TV revenue. So then they sued the NBA in 2014, and the NBA said, okay, here's $500 million up front.
Wow.
So they've made almost $1 billion doing absolutely nothing. And the money revenue, as long as the revenue of the TV contracts keep going up, they keep making more money doing absolutely nothing.
Which is ridiculous because these TV contracts are going to start exploding pretty soon.
Yeah, that is probably why I love this merger, and is like the greatest financial deal ever made in history. I'm sorry if I went on thing, but that is if I could make $1 billion by what are we saying here, I will fold my team, but I get 1/7 of everything you do forever.
Matt does numbers.
Well, what do you think, Matt? Tim? What's the biggest part of the merger for you? What's its lasting impact? Other than giving us the NBA, of course, right. But what's...
Well, to me, it just made the NBA more... It expanded it in such a way that it was able to go in all these different regions, and it was able to be consumed by so many different markets, like a team like San Antonio that Kate had said earlier. If it wasn't for this, it might not be around to this day. So it's just things like that I really loved it. Again, going back to the wrestling comparison, it's the same way when they merged together. WWE was such an up north kind of company. WCW was more of a down south. once they merged together, it was more global, and they were able to expand upon that. And the NBA kind of did the same thing after this whole merger. They was like, well, how else can we expand upon this? And it became they went, looked into Europe and all these things. It was like the first step into what we got today.
So I do have a question. Like, how does a team become a team now? I guess, like, because obviously there's more than those teams you just listed. So, like, how do you go about adding teams, or how did they add teams?
The NBA
Is that too complicated?
Kind of. It has to do with, like, it's just all money.
Oh, okay.
But
I could tell you had a team get stolen. You can just ask Seattle.
I believe the last team that was added was the Charlotte Bobcats. I believe was the last team that was added.
Were they
as part
actually
of the expansion.
added, or was... No, I guess technically Charlotte then moved to New Orleans, and so then they were added back, I guess. So is
there a difference between adding and moving or changing names? Like, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because teams moved all the time, but there's still been teams. Like, the Lakers used to be out of Minneapolis. Like, that's where they got that's why they're called the Lakers.
The Jazz used to be out of New Orleans.
I hate that Los Angeles, like, they're like the Los Angeles Lakers still when there's...
Yeah.
But, yeah, adding is different than moving.
Okay.
There's been a lot of teams. Actually, San Antonio moved from Dallas like 2 years before they actually were in San Antonio.
Because I did always wonder that, because I knew that they were in the New Orleans Jazz before, which makes sense, especially because Mormons, like, have, like, there's certain types of music they don't listen to, and I would assume that jazz is one of them.
As you referred to the beginning of the show, basketball, if you watch the intro of that, they make fun of, like, all of the names from the best NBA.
But there have been, like, rumors in basketball circles that I've seen that the NBA is planning to do another expansion and adding 2 to 4 teams. And some cities they're looking at is Austin.
Really?
Thinking about giving Austin a team, and finally giving Seattle a team again.
Okay.
How they got robbed from the Supersonics.
Do you happen to know, because I know the NHL just added this, and I think technically the NFL now, are they looking at Las Vegas?
The NBA, the commissioner now, Adam Silver, he's more progressive than these other commissioners in these other major sports. As far as gambling, he actually supports gambling in sports and betting on sports. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do get a basketball team in Las Vegas. Wow. He's very about the money.
Yeah.
He understands. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. That kind of answers my question. And now I'm just like, damn. I guess I'm just kind of like, because I didn't know is it the Pelicans? Are the Pelicans a basketball team now?
Yes.
I didn't know they were a thing. Like, I obviously don't follow it religiously. I follow it when the Spurs are, like, in the playoffs because it's everywhere. And since I mean,
in your defense, like, only a handful of teams even have relevance.
This is
like
sadly
the last
true.
decade anyway,
like, if you look at the NBA.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense.
Your boy LeBron's been there almost every year for like the last decade.
I mean,
okay, next topic.
Carried by James Jones the entire time.
Right. Go, James Jones. 7 straight. Right. All right. You want to move to the But Why Those, Kate? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's why we're here.
But Why Those for this are slightly different than what we did for the WWE episode, but we're still going to try to keep it as much to, why it matters. This will be a little bit more why it matters for the sport and why it matters for try to bring it back to culture as much as we can. So we're going to start with the heavy stuff first, and we're going to go straight into race because especially after the last couple of years or so, it's been a big topic for the NBA. So we're going to go into it straight away. So before the NBA is a thing, way before the NBA is even a thing, basketball is pretty segregated. Obviously, most of the teams are white, but there was these small pockets of all black professional basketball teams. Most of the time they're known as the Black Fives. And as a lot of these associations aren't integrated, they're playing in sports leagues run by YMCAs and churches and things like that. But this is back in 1904 when basketball is starting to get to get going and starting to become popular. And as much as I try to look into it, there's really no real. I mean, I'm sure there is, but it's hard to find information about these black basketball teams, which is crazy. Like NBA, like if you go on the NBA website, there's no mention of any of these teams or any of their real contributions to basketball outside of what happens in the 50s.
And does that happen from just lack of documentation at the time, or like an erasal of documentation? Because I know that like whenever
I think it's a little of both.
Okay.
Because if you go, because you can find like some audio of some of the games that these guys played, but you're really hard pressed to find actual video of them doing anything until right before the NBA becomes the NBA in the late 40s. So I think it's a little both because early American history, especially around this time, is pretty racist.
Yeah, because I know they did the same thing with Native American football teams, kind of a rewriting of what they went through and stuff like that, or like a removal of it. So I was curious to find out about that. That's interesting. I'd be interested to see more work on that actually.
I just find that
I'm sure there is. And what?
I just found that interesting because like there's really not much on basketball, but there seemed to be quite a bit from like the baseball side.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of like the difference, I guess, because all the focus is on baseball at this time, and crossing the line and things like that. I guess basketball's kind of left in the background because it's barely starting to get its prevalence in America.
Yeah, I mean that's true because I think that makes sense why there would be more information on baseball, mostly because baseball was like if you could funnel down America to a sport or to a pastime, it was baseball for the longest time. So breaking those barriers there were a lot more documented, I could see, and I can easily see like other sports just kind of falling to the wayside because it doesn't serve as a nice metaphor for scholars to tackle.
Yeah. Exactly. And as our resident scholar, I'm sure you'll look into it, and I'm sure you'll be able to get some more information for our listeners. I think the biggest thing that comes out of this, in terms of like what's relevant today and what people know about today, is the Harlem Globetrotters spawns from this Black Fives era of basketball, because they were one of the all-black teams around this time, before the NBA was even a thing. So like this was, going back to just being so undocumented and so, I guess unappreciated. In 2005, Congress passed a joint resolution that said, quote, they wanted to recognize the teams and players of the barnstorming African-American basketball teams for their achievement, dedication, sacrifices, and contribution to basketball and to the nation prior to the integration of the white professional leagues.
That's awesome.
So Congress really likes getting involved in basketball, apparently. Get anything from that. So after the integration, that's kind of like, okay, now we're integrated. There's no like real big spectacle about it that, from what I can see, it's just like, okay, college basketball players who are black come play basketball in the NBA now. And there are a few of those. I wrote down a few of them, but we can put these in the show notes. And it really doesn't get super popular until you have like the first black player in an all-star game in Don Barksdale in 1953, and that's when you can start seeing black players in the NBA being more appreciative. When I was reading through this, I saw a speculative rumor. I couldn't find anything definitive on it, but there was like a thing going on once black players started to become more prevalent in the game. The game obviously statistically got faster. There's more jumping. It's played more above the rim. And there was supposed to be like a gentleman's agreement that you could only have so many black players on one team. I couldn't find anything definitive on that. But 1950s, 1960s America, like I'm not going to put that past anything for that to probably be true.
Well, I know that that's how it was with football. Like I know that for like the first like all Native American teams and stuff like that, white teams did not want to play them because they were seen as being more savage. You put that in scare quotes, and like aggressive, and that they were like they were scared that their white players were going to be hurt by the Native American school. So
but if you go back and even if you look at like the Black Fives era basketball, when they played like the all-white all-star team, they didn't do too well. They was it the Washington Bears? I think they were called. Destroyed like the all-white American all-star team. Yeah. So I don't put it past them to be like, all right, hey, San Antonio, not too many, you know.
Can't do that.
And, you know, regardless of like all this controversy and stuff, the NBA is predominantly black players now. As of 2015, the census had 74.4% of players being black, 23.3% of players being white, 1.8% being Latino, represent Kate and Tim, and then 0.2% being Asian. So if you put this against like other major professional sports teams in the US and Canada, the NBA has the highest percentage of black athletes in any major sport in the US and Canada. So it makes talking about their racial problems that we're going to talk about here in just a second pretty messed up, considering their demographics as the player base, and, you know, kind of like where all the money is. The only reason we have all this money is because how great these athletes are. So the first one we're going to talk about, because it happened.
Can I ask you a question before we get into, I guess, what the first thing we're going? Since we were talking about, I guess, the percentage and stuff. Because I kind of want to know, I guess, your guys' thoughts. Because back in 2004, Larry Bird made the statement that he thinks the NBA needs more white players to draw, I guess, even more, I guess, white fans, I believe. I didn't know if anybody had any thoughts about that. Because it just seemed...
Have you seen a game in Cleveland?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen... That's what I'm saying. I guess that's what I kind of thought. Because, I mean, you look in the stands and you're like, well, there's a lot of white people in the stands.
Yeah.
I mean, this topic has been around in the NBA for years and years. In the 70s, that was a big topic point. That because in the 70s, the ratings in the NBA kind of dwindles a little. And a lot of the people said that it had to do with the NBA being too black, and, you know, white people don't want to see a bunch of black people on the court. But with Larry Bird, you know, I don't want to agree with him, but I mean, I wouldn't say the NBA needs more white players, but probably it's needing a white superstar, which I don't think the NBA has. I would say the best white basketball player is probably Kevin Love or Gordon Hayward, which, I mean, they aren't, you know, LeBron level, but they're pretty good.
No one's LeBron level, so
okay, they're not James Harden, Russell Westbrook levels. Yeah. They're you know, lower tier all-stars. Or Blake Griffin, who's half white, you know. I don't know if that counts. Stephen Curry too is a half white superstar, which I think actually attributes to the fact that he's viewed as probably the most popular NBA player right now. So, like, with Larry Bird's comment, I don't completely agree with it, but I understand it.
So, like, from a scholarly perspective, so I've read quite a few works on football and, like, the position, like, the makeup, like, there are very few black quarterbacks, but yet there are a lot of other positions are filled by black players. And, like, statistically, when it comes to sport, because it's seen as something detached from reality happening in its own space, a lot of, like, there have been studies to prove that white people will pay to watch black people play sports because they see it as something separate from the reality that they're living. So I don't necessarily think that's... I think white people will watch it to bring in a white audience. That being said, we've talked, I think on other shows, we've talked a lot about, like, the representation issues and how, like, seeing yourself in things can give you inspiration to do things. So if, like you said, Tim, if there's not a white superstar, then you're probably not going to have, you know, a white child thinking, oh, I can do that. The same way you won't have an Asian child thinking, oh, I can do that, or a Latino child thinking, oh, I can do that. That being said, like, I think that has relevancy, but I'm kind of so I think, like, representation there is important for aspirations, but I think at the same time I'm kind of like, but there are white superstars everywhere else, so is that really a problem? But then again, like, I'm not a young boy wanting to play basketball, so I can't really, like, speak to that.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I don't want to say it's tough, because that makes it sound like what he's saying is, like, prolific and, like, very thought-provoking.
Yeah.
I just thought it was very...
Like, all these... Because if it's for, like, a fan reason, he's totally wrong. Because look at Cleveland. Look at all of these sports teams that are in predominantly white cities that sell out. It's all about if your team's good or not.
And that's been happening
If your team's good, people will show up. I think for representation part, I think that one is kind of the harder one to tackle, because if the white players aren't better than the black players, then they're not going to get to play. Like, that's just how it is. It's not like the WWE where you could, push a white superstar or, a insert, race here superstar to get representation out there. You're kind of beholden on who's the best player to put on your basketball team of a very small roster.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this, like when you look at like issues that or like research that has been done looking at race, like for a lot of underprivileged youth that haven't been able to see themselves in position of power that have been driven by education, things like sports are a way out of probably less than stellar circumstances. And with the way the demographic is in this country, that means that the majority of children of color are looking to sports as an out versus education. So I think that then fuels like more people of color putting in the work to be better than another player than say somebody else. That doesn't exclude future Larry Birds, but I think that it does selects the pool that is going into these arenas because of the drive to get out of a station.
I just found that I guess what you said can be said about not just like I guess basketball, but for a lot of sports in general, and not even just like America, but like a lot of third world countries.
Yeah,
which are like bred.
Yeah,
baseball, they're bred and everything. Like, what are we almost like? This is what you're going to do.
Yeah, because
and I think the reason I mainly asked this was because Larry Bird was, I guess, a superstar in the NBA. It wasn't just like a random journalist or columnist.
Yeah, of course.
It was an actual
He's also a superstar in the NBA at a lot of different times.
This is true.
Where white players were still.
Yeah. And I think too, good. Like just so we don't have that whole like, what was it the ESPN person who made that Dominican comment, so that Matt doesn't get a whole bunch of ats at him on Twitter. Like I think we've talked about it in the past, like by ourselves, like during the World Cup and stuff. Like a lot of these third world countries, they go to soccer academies.
I'm talking about like in baseball, where you're like 4 and you're swinging a bat.
Well, yeah, and I know, and I'm talking about in soccer. In soccer, they do that too.
I don't mean to be like, but I mean, unfortunately, that is what has actually happened. That is like literally the way so many people feel. There's the only way they are able to get out of their countries.
And that's what I'm saying too. Like, it's the same thing for the people in the favelas in Brazil playing soccer and all that stuff. Like, this is an out. Like sports, if you're gifted with the ability and you put in the time, like it's not an easy way. Like it's not easy. Like the sacrifices that you put into it is not easy, but it's one of the only ways to get out of poverty, to get out of a third world country and go sign with another country and go live there. And I brought up soccer because a lot of these players in Brazil or Argentina, they don't play for those countries other than at the World Cup.
Yeah. I think we could do a whole entire episode on this.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's fine. But I'm sorry. We could do a whole episode on just this topic alone. So let's get back to Adrian, what you were going to bring up before I kind of went on with Larry Bird a little bit.
Oh, I just wanted to talk because, I mean, it works because that comment kind of like follows in the same time period as
that's why I kind of like wanted to lead with that to go, especially after
it totally works because you have the NBA dress code. Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah,
about what it was and its kind of implications?
Yeah, so the NBA dress code was implemented by David Stern, the commissioner at the time. I believe it was in 2005. Now, the whole reasoning behind the dress code was players at the time were dressing, the players reflected kind of like the hip hop culture. They would dress in oversized, baggy t-shirts, baggy pants, the Jordan sneakers, the Nike sneakers with the whole bunch of jewelries, the do-rags like Allen Iverson, who was one of the most popular players at the time, would wear. This was in a time right after the Malice in the Palace in Detroit, where the Pistons and the Pacers got into a huge fight, brawl, and it went into the stands, and they started attacking fans that involved Ron Artest and Jermaine O'Neal and all these players, Steven Jackson, and it was also around this time where my favorite basketball player, Kobe Bryant, was going through a rape case, and David Stern.
I thought you were going to say rape phase.
I know. I'm just for the listeners out there. My faces are being made right now.
Whoa! I was sort of like, whoa.
I'm like that.
So David Stern, felt that his league had like a huge black eye. It was viewed, a lot of people from the outside looking in viewed as the NBA full of, these quote unquote thugs and these savages and whatever, this case and the other. So he implemented this dress code that basically made you dress, like in a suit, real business when you're coming, like you're coming to work. This isn't a game, quote unquote. This isn't just for fun. Like, this is your job. Now, a lot of players, rebelled against this dress code at first, involving, like I said earlier, Allen Iverson. Paul Pierce was one of them. Steven Jackson. Paul Pierce said that he felt that this dress code was basically against just the black players, that it didn't affect the white players, because he took away. Paul Pierce's statement said that no matter how you dress me up, no matter how you make my outside appearance, I'm gonna still be the person that I am on the inside. And he didn't believe that David Stern understood that. He was like, you can put all these, Versace whatever suits on me, I'm gonna still be this guy no matter what. Allen Iverson was another huge objection, who was probably the most popular at the time. He was very intertwined with the hip hop culture. Nowadays, the basketball players, it's been around for more than 10 years now. The basketball players view this as more of like a game to see who can dress the best.
Yes.
Westbrook,
Dwayne Wade,
Harden.
LeBron's another one. They view the entrance into the game more like like a fashion show. So it doesn't affect them as much as it did when it first was implemented. But that's basically what the dress code is.
I think that's. I was gonna say
no.
I think that's really relevant, because I know one of the hot not hot topics, but one of the really big topics going on. Like, I think this is a reflection of dress codes in like how pop culture dress codes are also part of like this larger idea of dress codes. Because right now there's been a lot of issues with like young black girls not being able to wear their hair in braids, and that is specifically a black hairstyle that is being targeted versus like hairstyles from everybody else. And so this is still really relevant, because it's something that's like it's being done right now, like being done across the board. So it's really interesting to see kind of how like they took it in stride and then like turned it into a competition. And like I wonder if there are any like, I don't know, I guess implications like beyond that, like beyond just like the NBA. I mean, obviously it's different because like grooming standards and stuff for men and women are completely different. But yeah, I just thought of that comparison while you were explaining it. And I think it's a really strong point.
I didn't really like when they implemented it, and I don't know, I guess, too much, but I guess besides the background or like obviously the, I guess, focus on towards black players, problem I had as well was, I believe a lot of this was just them entering the stadium and going to the locker room, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was like, one, I'm literally getting out of my vehicle and walking to the car. Who cares what I'm wearing? I guess was like why I felt that. I mean, obviously, I know there's a lot more implications to it, but I just knew, at least from what I always saw about it, was like literally just these people walking from their car to the locker room. And I didn't understand why that was a big deal to where you need to require a dress code on. Yeah, I
don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I mean, that was like I said. I understood. Like I said, I didn't know. I mean, I understood the whole part about black.
They knew that in 10 years, Westbrook would be wearing
fake glasses.
What he's wearing now. Yeah, so like that's he was planning ahead, basically.
Yeah,
showing his ankles.
I think But I do think like that observation kind of like strengthens like the reasoning that Tim pointed out, that a lot of the players felt like, I am just going to my car. Why does it matter? Like, you are obviously targeting me for looking this way.
Yes. So, I mean, that's the way I took it. Unfortunately. But yeah.
And now we'll move into the big one, which is probably like one of the most relevant things that have happened in the NBA in the last few years. Donald Sterling, and him basically being banned from life and getting his team taken away for some racist stuff.
Racist things. So this whole deal with Donald Sterling was, he was at the time, it's happened around 2014, I want to say. He was the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, and a leaked audio clip of him speaking privately to his then girlfriend, basically telling his girlfriend that he didn't want her to bring black people to his games, that to stop inviting her black friends, that they didn't deserve to be there, or he didn't want them to be in his seat or whatever. And this is a man who for years and years has been alleged of saying very racist things and treating his black players very, very badly. And one of them being Baron Davis, who's been on record of saying that he's wanted to punch him in the face a couple times. And when this audio leaked, TMZ, released it. TMZ, the greatest source ever, and
second only to World Star Hip Hop.
Exactly, the greatest website ever. And so, it was actually during the playoffs at the time, and a lot of the players, like that we said earlier, they are African American, and they did not take kindly to this, and his star Chris Paul threatened to not play the playoff game, as did a whole bunch of not only the players on his team, but of other teams across the league. LeBron James was one that said that he'll sit out if the NBA didn't do something about this. So the then new commissioner of the league, Adam Silver, took this as his chance to build some rapport with his players, with the fans, and banned him for life. He is not allowed to be anywhere near the NBA. And they forced him to sell his team that was bought by the Clippers was bought by Steve Ballmer, which he is now the owner of. So David Sterling was just banished from the league for what he said regarding black people at his games.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like, you're profiting off of black players.
Exactly.
Every single night. And for you to have that kind of view is just insane. You do not deserve to own a basketball team or have any association with the NBA if you're going to say stuff like that.
Yeah, his reasoning for why he was not racist was, he said, well, I pay for these dudes' foods and their houses and their cars, so how can I be racist? Like, I pay them.
Yeah.
And he had a real infamous interview, I want to say with CNN, where he just bashed Magic Johnson for whatever reason, saying, well, he has AIDS. What does Magic know? And I was like, this guy is he just needs to go. After a certain age, you just start losing it up there. Yeah. Maybe owning a basketball team, which is such a big deal, isn't for you anymore.
Because, I will say that,
rocker.
And, I didn't know I forgot about the CNN interview. I thought it was all the private stuff, though.
The CNN interview.
Yeah, so, essentially, I think what it sets, I think it and I think Matt can talk about, some of the other slippery slopes, but I think what it sets is when you see stuff happen or hear stuff happen, regardless of how it got out there, once it's out there, because hate speech and these things aren't illegal, because it is free speech, they're not illegal. If you're not inciting violence, you can say what you want. But I think the responsibility is on the community around it to say this is not acceptable. And so you have to, that's when you react and you implement consequences and hold people accountable for these types of really racist things. Because then you have to create an environment where you can't profit from being racist. That being said, I do know, he sued, right? He sued the NBA?
He is still in process of suing the NBA.
Okay.
There's still a lawsuit pending.
Because of the broken privacy issues. So It's kind of like the ill-gotten fruit, which I see that point, but I also see the point, once it's out there, you kind of got to deal with it, and you got to create you have to say that's not acceptable. Either way, no matter how it got out, it's not acceptable. And then obviously the Magic Johnson interview,
Johnson interview is pretty
that's
bad.
Public. Yeah. That's not private. That's public.
Exactly.
So, did you want to say anything, or?
This was a very slippery slope. It's one of those. There's a lot of privacy issues involved. It was a vindictive woman who released tapes of him at his own house. He was a very terrible person. He's had multiple lawsuits, whether it be sexual harassment or discrimination lawsuits against him stemming all the way back from 1996. And far from a privacy issue, it's a hard slippery slope, because I'm well, I don't like that it came from a house by somebody just recording, technically illegally. But then I understand kind of like how the NBA had to react. And the only other issue, because I mean, he should have been gone a long time. For one, he was an inept owner, and he had so many other problems. As you said earlier, there was like Baron Davis thing, the Magic Johnson thing. There was other countless lawsuits. The other problem, I guess not really a problem, but the issue you had was like Chris Paul came out and said all these things as like a protest, and I had a problem with because some of these stuff that Donald Sterling's been known about for like 30 plus years. You took money to go. I mean, he technically was traded there, but then he re-signed there. DeAndre Jordan signed there. Doc Rivers came over there to sign there to play, and it's kind of like to me, I have sometimes problem when people with like a lot of money or come like, I'm gonna gladly go over there and I'll take your $13 million, but then I'm gonna play the moral card. And it's like, why wouldn't you think about that when you chose a team for free agency? And that was the only like issue I kind of had with some of the, at least from the team perspective of like when they were trying to protest. So, and I wish they actually would have sat out the game against the Warriors instead of like walking. But that was on.
Yeah, I that would have been like a top 5 sports moment in
Yes.
this century. It would have really sent a huge precedent, but
Yeah, and I think
it is what it is.
I think unfortunately, like at the end of the day, like, and that's the reason why rich people get to be racist all the time, because at the end of the day, it's money. Green.
Yeah, I think it's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why the NBA and Adam Silver was able to go in and say, "All right, dude, get out," because it is a company. If you say racist stuff, your boss kind of has the
has the right to say
the ability to say, "Get the hell out." Is why Chris Paul can't say, "Hey, get out of here," because he's just an employee.
Yeah.
But when the big boss says you got to go, you got to go.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think too, like I just like as a final note before moving to the next thing, because I know we're short on time, but like I think what this does. And I think it really needs to force things like this need to force the hand of not just the owners to respond, but the actual commissioners and stuff of the NBA and other football teams to do something before it's like a leaked tape. Like actually handle this stuff when like this was not his first racist incident. Like do something before it gets to that point. Like that is also your obligation as an owner, is to handle it when it first happens.
I think the only
The NFL has that problem.
Yes,
Oh,
the NFL
God,
definitely
yes.
really does.
Yeah.
the Ray
Probably
the
worse.
Ray Rice situation and all of that.
And I think the one
Yeah,
thing,
Roger Goodell's a dick.
yes, a little bit like
I'm
Ice
going
Gladly
to
go
use
on.
my one curse word
Yes.
this episode to say Roger Goodell.
I think the only
He's not
final
a very
thought
good
that was
person.
weird was Donald Sterling's attorney throughout this whole, like back in 2014, said the NBA needs to look in the mirror and because they're a bunch of hypocrites, basically. And to some degree, I honestly agree with that. I mean, one of the major, like there was basically coming out too, one of the major critics of Donald Sterling was one of the majority shareholders from the Hawks, who then basically through these lawsuits got his emails ripped and realized that he sent a bunch of racist stuff through emails and had to step down.
True.
And so it was kind of like, I think as much as Donald Sterling need to go, there is other problems where you need to look at yourself as well.
Donald
And I
Sterling
think
should've
Adam Silver's
gone-
doing a great job of that.
Yeah, like Donald Sterling should have gone a long ass time ago, and you should probably keep the other racists out of the organization as well the first time they're racist. So, yeah. That being said, let's go into some more racist stuff. So, particularly about my Spurs. And I'm talking about Sebastian de la Cruz singing the national anthem in it's a charo outfit. It's what mariachis wear, and it was Spurs themed, so silver and black, and singing the national anthem. And Twitter pretty much berating the fact that a Mexican American in San Antonio was singing the national anthem. And this is a child. I think he was like 11 at the time, and one of the things that happened, and this is one of the reasons why I really love the Spurs, and I know other teams do this too, is like the Spurs have embraced the fact that even though the Latinx population in the NBA that play is very small, like when you look at cities like Miami or San Antonio or Los Angeles and places where there are high Latinx populations, they've embraced it. And for the Spurs in particular, everybody came out for Sebastian, and they invited him to sing again. And he had a gray and black mariachi outfit the next time. And so I think this is a testament to how NBA teams also reflect the cities that they're situated in. Specifically, like I think other teams do this too, but like I can go buy official NBA gear that have little Spurs on it, and that makes me really happy, because it means they're a part of my community at large. Is that part of a bigger NBA trend?
Yeah, Latin nights.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like that's really cool,
Yeah,
and I did not know that. Like, I thought it was just a San Antonio being awesome San Antonio thing, but
That's such a Spurs thing to say.
Yeah,
no.
it is. I'll be aware of that. But yeah, so I think when like on issues of race, like honestly, you can't control it when Twitter trolls erupt, because that happens all the time. Whenever a not white person sings the national anthem. But I think the responses from Pop and the rest of the Spurs were really, really great for that. And I think the fact that like the NBA has done stuff like Latin Nights to actually pay attention to like their Latinx viewership is really, really important. So that's my boat why though. I have one, guys.
The NBA also has Chinese New Year. On whenever they have games on Chinese New Year, they have the jerseys where everything is in Chinese.
Oh, that's awesome!
So
I did not know that.
yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, you can actually buy them. I believe last year the Warriors played on Chinese night against the Rockets, so you can go buy those jerseys. It's just everything's in Chinese, the players' names, everything.
That's really cool.
NBA does a lot of stuff that I wish other sports organizations would do. I wish more organizations would do stuff like that, you know. Because I can't think of any other major sports organization that does Latin nights or stuff on Chinese New Year where you can buy stuff like that.
Yeah, the NBA is definitely the most socially conscious sports organization out there. I mean, just look what happened when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, like the freaking world exploded.
Yeah.
But, you know, LeBron James can put his hood up when Trayvon Martin got shot and, you know, he gets applauded by his peers. So that just shows how different it is. Yeah, I'm going to stop praising LeBron. I've done it already like 3 times. That's my limit.
But I think that kind of gets into real quick. I'll go very quickly through this. Not that it's something to be gone through like glossed over, but NBA's charity work is huge. Like I can't think of any sports organization that does so much for the community, or like at least maybe it's just overly publicized and that's all I see all the time. But the NBA Cares, their NBA Cares is the name of like their charity work, and it seems like they do stuff all the time and basically every aspect that you could think of in ways that you can do charity work. I mean, they work with the Special Olympics, they work with the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club of America, UNICEF, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Share Your Strength. They do all of these things for all of these organizations, and even within their own organization, they have specialized charity groups, I guess you can say. Mm-hmm. So they do the Hoops for Troops, of course. You know, this is something that almost most of the big name sports do, but NBA Care Hoops for Troops is a year-round initiative led by the NBA, its teams, its players, in collaborations with the Department of Defense and other military and veteran-serving organizations to honor active and retired servicemen, women, and their family.
Is there, I guess, quick question, I guess. I don't know if knows, but do you think the NBA will ever do what the NCAA has done and actually play basketball games on a carrier?
Oh, damn.
Wow.
That you should go to Adam Stern.
Those I love those games where they make the carrier out of a court and they literally do college basketball games, and they for all the I guess the troops and everybody that's deployed or wherever they're at in base.
That's awesome.
They should the NBA All-Star thing should all be on a carrier.
That would be awesome.
I want to see.
I need front row tickets.
Stupid dunks on it. On a carrier.
If you ever get a chance to YouTube that. That's pretty cool.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
They also do My Brother's Keeper, which is essentially like their mentoring program that launched with President Obama. So it's their way of helping boys and young men of color find pathways to success. They're even in the environment aspect of community service with NBA Green, where they've partnered with Green Sports Alliance to generate awareness and funds for protecting the environment. So they're using, and the players are using, their abilities and their money and their ability to inspire kids, adults, veterans to do better outside of watching them on weeknights playing basketball.
Wait, so there's a cause other than just breast cancer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Or,
exactly.
or paid.
You do more than wear pink in
veterans.
October, NFL.
Yeah, so not to sound like I was making fun of that. I mean, I kind of was. My aunt survived breast cancer. My mother had breast cancer. I understand the importance, but there is a lot. I know it's awesome to see that there's other charity work being done here, because I think a lot of the times the wearing pink thing is the easy thing to do for charity work and the easy thing to do during games and everything like that. It makes you look good. You going through that, Adrian, really makes me have a really warm fuzzy spot for the NBA, because it actually looks like they're not just looking good, they're actually dedicating a lot of time to doing good too.
Yeah, I think it highlights their importance of charity work. It also highlights why we as a podcast, our itty bitty small podcast, is doing more episodes highlighting charities. I mean,
yeah.
By the time this recording comes out, we will have had one out about the Stack Up military charity. So, just doing little things here and there, the NBA being huge is able to do big things all over.
Yeah.
Not just here, but globally as well. So hats off to them for their work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me into another one of why the NBA is so important is just their ability to just have a total global presence around the world. A lot of this stems from them doing international tours. They first started doing this in 1978 with their first exhibition game in Israel. To this day, they do preseason and regular season games overseas. They don't just go and play once in London and then come back. They have multiple games all around the world.
I feel like this should be the NFL Shade episode.
Yeah, I love the NFL. It's my favorite, but man,
they send the
do
most
a lot of
horrible
shady
teams
stuff.
to London. I think Jacksonville's played there every year.
Jacksonville is a huge favorite in England. But only because they get sent there all the time. And then just the rise of international stars in the NBA, giving countries something to root for, and like Kate was saying, seeing players like yourself over there. So these last few years, you have basically almost the entire Spurs team being, international players for the most part. And then you have the Yao Mings, the Dirk Nowinskis, Steve Nash from Canada, Jeremy Lin, Akeem Olajuwon, of course, and even some of the smaller role players like Dellavedova from Australia. He kind of puts them on the map a little bit just from what he did.
Andrew Bogut,
yeah. So there's just all these international players that come to.
Yeah,
Porzingis, my man. So they give these other countries a reason to watch the NBA.
Yeah.
And then when the Olympics roll around, they don't expect them to play for the U.S. when it comes around. They go play for their home countries, and you get to see them go home and represent their own countries after playing in the U.S. And then, of course, things that put NBA on the map, the Dream Team in 1992, who can forget that just dominant Hall of Fame, beating people by 44 points a game, just dominance there. And the Redeem Team kind of had to re-put us back on the map.
My favorite team. I love that team.
Come on.
Also, I think too,
I would die on that boat that the Redeem Team would beat the Dream Team. That's just my opinion.
If you have to be called the Redeem Team,
that'll get us into our next, but why those here? I mean, okay. So this gets me into why I think the NBA is so important, because I honestly do not think that any other sport generates as much debate and conversation at bars or on buses or anything more than the NBA, just because it's wide scope and just how differently it's played than other sports. Debates like that, the Dream Team versus the Redeem Team. I think most of me and Tim's conversations when we were in high school was about basketball, and listening to him talk to some of our other friends and how he had to defend Kobe Bryant and his greatness over other players and stuff like that. It's a huge part of why I think basketball. and Matt's shaking his head here.
The ignorance.
Yeah, as he would say, defending against the ignorance. I would say it as just blindfolders, not witnessing true greatness. But just that conversation, I think, is one of the best things about basketball. It's why Tim's here today.
So
I say, hey, want to come talk basketball? Tim's like, yeah, I'm all about it.
All about it.
I was like, so can I ask a question to get a little? I know we're running short on time, but I want a little mini debate here, just because I know how much all y'all are invested. Who's the GOAT?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let Tim go first.
All right. So the reason why that's exactly why I love basketball, because no matter what you say, I mean, I'm gonna be strong with my opinions. There is no wrong answer unless you just say like a scrub, like Kwame Brown. It's also it just depends on your criteria as to what makes you the GOAT. If somebody tells you, well, it's the person that was the best player on the championship team most times, then somebody's going to say, well, that's Bill Russell. He won 11 championships. Somebody could say, well, it's Michael Jordan because he went 6 for 6 in the finals. He got 6 finals MVPs, which nobody did. Well, then somebody could turn around and say, well, championships aren't everything, which is what LeBron fans used to say until he started winning championships, and now they want to throw that in your face. So then somebody could be like, well, LeBron, he passed Jordan in points and rebounds and assists in the playoffs. That's got to be the GOAT. Well, then I can tell you, well, stats don't mean everything. I can tell you from what I look at that Jordan is better than LeBron. I don't care what the stats say. If you look at the stats for this year, to me, this year in basketball proves the whole stats versus eye test thing. Because if you look at stats, Russell Westbrook is the best player in the NBA. He averaged the triple-double.
By shooting like a ridiculous amount of shots. If you think LeBron James shot that much, he wouldn't average that either.
Listen, but that's my point. The stats would tell you that Russell Westbrook is the best player in the NBA. But my eyes tell me that he is not. The best player in the NBA today is LeBron James. Correct? I can look at it. I don't need the stats to tell me, well, LeBron scored 26 points on 60% shooting from 40%, and on this day with this, I don't need to know all those stats. I can just look at the game and tell you LeBron is the best. Now, as far as the GOAT, the greatest of all time, that is Michael Jeffrey Jordan. That's just, there. To me, that is not a debate. You cannot debate that anybody has been better than Michael Jordan. He just dominated the game in an aspect that nobody has. Now, people might say LeBron has, but he just hasn't. LeBron has those games like he just had last week where he just goes ghost in Game 3 against the Celtics, where he had 11 points. He had a terrible game. Jordan didn't have games like that. When you played against Jordan, you saw a game with Jordan, you knew exactly what you were going to get. He was going to drop 40 in the game. He was going to shoot amazingly, and he was going to kill your team. And you don't always get that vibe from LeBron. LeBron scares you, but he doesn't terrify you like Jordan did.
But we'll never, ever talk. Jordan fans and people who say he's the GOAT will never, ever, ever talk about his seasons with the Wizards.
Well, okay.
Never, ever. Oh, Jordan did it in less seasons, but we're not going to count what he did in with the Wizards. So, you think LeBron James is ever going to have a season like seasons like that?
He plays until he's 43.
The way he's going now, the longevity of his greatness will ever have Washington Wizards seasons.
Look. Into that, I rebuttal with the 2011 finals where LeBron James, the quote unquote GOAT, the best player in the NBA, got outplayed by 6 foot JJ Barea and 6 foot Jason Terry. Michael Jordan, counting in the Wizards years, that wasn't Michael Jordan. That was some guy that looked like
that wasn't LeBron James. That was some guy who looked like LeBron James.
Okay, fair enough, but I'm pretty sure that was LeBron James. I saw it.
So I'm gonna jump in here. So one, because I want to hear who Matt's favorite player is, but also because I just want to say Tim Duncan will have a statue of him in the middle of San Antonio in Hemisphere Park. I'm just gonna say that. But I have no stats to back it up. I just know that our city will build a testament to his greatness, and we don't give two flying things if anybody says he's not GOAT for us. So he gonna get a statue. But yeah,
Tim Duncan was a good player. I can't hate on him. But
and he's a good guy, and he doesn't have a rape case.
He's cool.
Just saying.
Oh,
yes.
This must be my exit.
Got him.
That's my biggest knock against LeBron haters, especially ones that love Kobe. Like, regardless, like the dude switched teams from an organization that did absolutely nothing from him LeBron has a sexual assault case, or
LeBron.
Kobe has a sexual assault case, changes his number, and everybody still loves him. Get out of here.
I have a few more against Kobe, but yeah.
Okay, so
Let me hear it. What you got?
yeah, so let's get Matt in here.
Basically, he couldn't win a title without Shaq. Those years without Shaq, he looked awful.
He did.
He put up like 50 points, and they did awful in the East or the West. Excuse me. Basically, they had to have a trade that probably would have been boycott, where they got donated another All-Star, and then they won some more titles. So without Paul Gasol or Shaq, Kobe is basically the eighth in the West.
Ooh.
Look. Okay, and I can say that about basically every other superstar that's ever played. There's no player that can do it by himself. Did you see that roster that they put out there with Kobe in 2005, 2006? Smush Parker was the point guard. I can be Smush Parker. Okay, they had Chris Mim out there at center. They had Slava Minfadinko out there. Like, they had, Rudy Tomjanovich as their coach, who's not a really good coach. And Kobe did what he can. He carried that team to the 8th seed, which, mind you, they lost, and they lost a 3-1 series. I can't defend that. But there is no player that can say, I did it by myself. Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen. He never won without Scottie Pippen. LeBron had Dwayne Wade, and now Kyrie Irving. He hasn't won without them.
Yeah, but they're also not averaging 30 points and 15 rebounds in the finals.
Okay, and I know you're referencing Shaquille O'Neal. Well, Shaq at the time was the best player. This was a Kobe Bryant. That was 3 years into the league.
I watched Kobe throw away the Pistons series, trying to take away from Shaq, who was dominating.
And don't use rookie status.
Yeah, they would have.
I do know Duncan. That I will say.
They would have won so many more champions if Kobe just wasn't a dick and coexisted with Shaq. So many more championships.
See, I don't agree with the whole they would have won a lot of championships. Shaq was already out his prime by 2004.
He went and won one with Wade, and he was old.
How did he do it in Miami?
Okay, he won with Wade. Wade was a top 5 player.
He had Kobe Bryant, who was supposed to be a top 3 player.
But that Lakers roster was deteriorating. They had Gary Payton, who was far out of his prime. Karl Malone, who retired the next year.
He got an MVP for going 6 for 24 in Game 7, and basically had Ron Artest have to bank in a 3-pointer to beat Boston off of Kendrick Perkins being injured.
Hey, so
true.
Okay, hold on. One last thing, Tim. Last rebuttal, and then Matt, your goat, and then we're gonna move on. But this is awesome. I'm really enjoying this. So Tim, last rebuttal.
Okay, so I don't even. I'm just getting mad. Okay, so the whole Kobe is not a perfect player. I've never said he's a perfect player, but the reason people like to throw his deficiencies at him, and they like to glorify these other players for the same deficiencies. Kobe is a fantastic player, and to me, from players that I've seen with my own eyes. I know I said Jordan is the GOAT, but Kobe just played a way that is unmatched. I haven't seen nobody play like him, from his footwork to his basketball IQ. When he was in his prime, he was a lockdown defender. He just had it all. He had the whole package. And, yes, and he swept the Spurs in 2001. So.
Got him.
He eliminated the Spurs in 2009, I want to say, on his way to another title. So, Tim Duncan don't got nothing on Kobe.
What about you, Matt? I think my answer is rather unanimous. My eye test says no one does it as easily as LeBron James does it, and makes people around him better, unlike other players.
I will say this though, Tim. I do remember that kid that got would have gotten bullied at school that loved Kobe. He did always have the numbers to back it up, because it might have or might have not have been in those years when we got swept by them. So. I will say that, but still, Duncan's a good person.
Yeah, he's fine. He's cool.
Yeah, no assault cases. What about you?
I mean, as far as I guess a pure basketball physical specimen, I'm sorry, LeBron is just he's 6'5" and 240.
6'8".
6'8". My bad, 6'8",
240.
240. And just he moves like I said, he says so gracefully. He just basically, if he wants to get to the basket, he will. Now, saying all that, I mean, his competition and some of the rule changes, I can't give him the GOAT. I'm sorry. I mean, Russell obviously didn't play against anybody.
He's been underdog in 6 of 8 of his finals.
Adrian,
like, what do you
Matt
like?
has not
That's such a stupid argument. Like, oh, he has no control over the East being weak, but he still makes it to the finals to play great teams.
My high school team could make it to the finals some of those years in the East.
How's that LeBron's fault? Why is that a knock against LeBron?
But that's my point with the whole LeBron has been an underdog for 6 of the 8 finals. Jordan was never the underdog. To me, you can't be
playing
the
against
GOAT.
our competition. The Bulls teams are known as some of the greatest teams ever.
True, but I think I can also rebuttal that with the reason why they're looked at so good is because of Jordan
and Pippen.
LeBron is hard pressed to even. You can even say he's been part of an all-time great team. He probably has the 2013 Miami Heat, but that's it. He's only been on one historically great team.
You're right. He is carrying teams to the finals. You're right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Matt,
that.
do you want to finish who GOAT is?
I mean, obviously, I guess just between things, I mean, pretty much everybody agrees it's Michael Jordan. He was pretty much dominant. You knew he was going to be there. He played all.
And he has
82.
a Looney Tunes movie.
He does have a Looney Tunes movie.
LeBron James is getting his Space Jam 2.
I don't like doing the GOAT question because there's just so many between different errors, like you said, and between some of the rule changes and defensively, like you talked about the Pistons earlier. Them Pistons would have beat up LeBron, especially considering you say he had no help. They would just beat him down because of the rules they had.
So,
but isn't that lend to LeBron's defense being that much better, depending seeing how good he is on defense without all of the hand checking
I guess
rules?
Jordan had to beat the Pistons. He had to deal with Magic. He had to deal with Bird. I mean, he didn't really get to face Olajuwon. He did with Karl Malone, Stockton,
let's be honest.
Charles
they
Barkley.
Were big in the 80s.
And I think one of the other arguments I look at from my standpoint, it's just more of a, I guess, before we get into, the last part of controversies, I would think of Chris Paul. Chris Paul has been dominated, but if you took Chris Paul and put him in the East for his entire career and took LeBron and put him in the West, I think Chris Paul could be playing at least 3 finals, if not more, on some of the teams he had.
And LeBron James would be winning every finals every year if he was on
in the West.
Any of the teams.
If you had to play the Spurs,
no,
the Warriors,
I don't disagree. Look at what he does to teams in the West in the finals now. Look what he did to the Warriors last year's super team. Imagine if he's on. Give him Kevin Durant instead of Westbrook on the Thunder.
Okay, but the last year's finals.
Put him on the Spurs.
I know. I just know the competition from the playoffs. It seems like a dogfight to get out of the West, where LeBron's basically taken 2 weeks off because he hasn't played anybody.
The Golden State just went 12-0.
But that just shows you how great that team is.
I don't want to hear that.
But that just shows how great that team is.
Yeah.
But anyways, I guess can we move on to the conspiracy?
Yeah. So I'm gonna cut it here, and I'm just gonna say I'm kind of confused with a lot of the stuff that was said. Except for the fact that I realized that maybe GOATs are dependent on the era that they were in.
Well, that happens with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that lends to the controversies of just who's better, when, and what,
and whether or not you live in San Antonio.
Yeah, that too.
But so I guess let's move on to the controversies and conspiracies.
I guess we can wrap up these really fast or something. I actually was kind of excited for this, so I kind of want to throw them in here. Okay. I don't know why it's weird.
Yeah, because we've talked about some of them that we have here, like the Kobe Bryant issues, some of the gambling stuff, kind of. But we can talk about that with Jordan, the rule changes. Stuff
Kobe
like
Bryant got $136 million after being charged with rape.
Yeah.
Or sexual assault.
I didn't even know that. That just makes him even more difficult to me.
Oh my god! And Tim's never gonna be back on the podcast.
But the gambling thing with Jordan's retirement, it's the most craziest thing, and I'm totally if I ever want to be a conspiracy theory, I totally want to go for it. I totally want to believe it.
I think
okay, so what is it?
So basically, when Jordan's dad, I guess, was murdered, he supposedly went and played baseball to honor him for 2 years. That's why the Rockets got 2 titles in the 90s. And basically, there's conspiracy theory that he was also known to be a very high gambler, partier, and everything else, but they couldn't. David Stern basically you can't suspend, as we just talked about a minute, your GOAT.
Yeah.
And so they told him, here, go play baseball for 2 years as a quote-unquote suspension, honor your dad, do whatever, be a celebrity show, and then we'll let you come back.
Ah.
And so instead of taking the hit
That
of, like, you
seems
suspended your
believable.
GOAT, because he had a lot of gambling problems, a lot of party issues, and a lot of stuff like that going on.
And it just
Yeah,
makes him look like the
supposedly he was
perpetual
in-
nice guy.
Yeah, supposedly he was in heavy debt with some
Yes.
very bad people,
That too.
like owing millions and millions of
Yes.
dollars. So David Stern basically, well, this is what the theory goes. He told them either I suspend you for 2 years or you just do this quote unquote retirement and nobody has to know and you'll just be back in 2 years, 20 months. He was gone for 20 months.
Wow.
I totally believe it.
Yeah,
I
I do
believe
too.
that.
I just. My only thing for is just I don't understand how this hyper competitive guy that loved being the best at the peak of his powers, you know, is the end of 1993, thriving in this sport, just picks up his ball and goes home like for 20 months and then just comes back.
To go play baseball.
Yes, like
Yeah.
super competitive. Like I know, you know, I've heard arguments that they said like what's more, you know, what would get your competitive juices flowing than just, you know, starting something new in a game that you don't know nothing about really and see if you can make it to the major leagues. I just don't buy it. I think I believe this conspiracy theory 100%.
I do too. That's the first time I heard it. But actually, it sounds really viable because, I mean, like you just mentioned, Kobe making all that money. Like, with your stars, you do what they can so that they can stay stars, and you overlook a lot of their problems. And if that's what you need to do to keep him as a perpetual nice guy, he's still
Which
a
kind of
perpetual
leads
nice
into
guy.
the next part of the conspiracy of game fixing, which is funny, which brings up the number one thing involving your Kobe Bryant Lakers of Game 6 of the 2002 Western Conference Finals. Basically, the Lakers in the fourth quarter alone shot 18 more free throws to barely beat the Kings. And so there's been...
To barely beat the Kings, man.
Okay, that Kings team was
That
stacked.
team was pretty good.
First of all, that was a really good team. But I have no argument. That game was rigged. I've watched the game like 30 times, and some of the calls they made, like Kobe Bryant elbowing Mike Bibby and Mike Bibby getting called for the foul. There's nothing you can do to convince me to say that game
Which
wasn't
led
rigged.
to, guess, the whole Tim Donaghy thing, where he was basically, as David Stern tried to throw him under as a rogue official, basically saying that that the league officials basically fixed games, made calls, and whatnot. He ended up owing up the mafia and everything, kind of like Jordan, a lot of money. He ended up doing a lot. He ended up spending time in prison. He actually ended up writing a book called Blowing the Whistle, The Culture of the Fraud in the NBA. He said a lot more officials did this. Obviously, David Stern just went as he is a rogue official, because we hear that all the time when it's just one individual.
I mean, like, it's something that, I mean, like, my dad and I have talked about. And, like, I think whenever you have something that goes into a series versus, like, a one-and-done type thing, I think it really sets up to build the hype, to build the money that is coming in, to build the merchandise that you're selling, to rig games, especially
And
in
I
the
think
finals.
one other thing, which was funny about Tim Donaghy thing, so after he got out of prison, and he kept saying he still, like, writing this book and whatnot, he went on, basically said on April 22nd of 2014, basically goes, watch, the Nets are going to beat the Raptors to face the Heat because of better ratings and everything, but the Nets end up winning Game 7 by a point, like, basically a week later, which is pretty interesting considering you watched a lot of those finals.
Coincidence?
Yes,
think not.
Pretty much, no. But, I mean, I thought that was interesting. Obviously, it's just more of coincidence and stuff, but it was funny considering all the stuff that he had dealt with and tried to whistleblow on them.
So you're telling me I need to get my unsolved crime, like, red string board and start using it for NBA playoffs and
Little bit.
finals? Okay.
As Adrian staring at you like you're a lunatic, but that's fine.
Everybody knows I listen to true crime on this podcast. I've
That's
talked
fine.
about it before. Leave me alone.
But,
I'm
yeah.
going to solve one of these. I'm gonna
I don't know
crack
what
it
you
right
guys
open.
think about the whole rogue official thing, but yeah.
I mean, in like 2005, Jeff Van Gundy, who's not one to be quiet ever, said that he had sources that the NBA was calling more fouls on Yao Ming on purpose and got like fined $100,000 about it. So, I mean,
The Van Gundys are awesome
follows.
people, by the way.
They really are. I love them. I mean, there's just so much evidence of game fixing and rigging of games, and another big one was the 2006 NBA Finals. between the Miami Heat and the Dallas Mavericks.
I get amnesia during this game, so I don't know what he's talking about.
The one where Wade shot more free throws than the entire Mavericks team.
Yes,
exactly. Now the reasoning behind this rigging, well, as the conspiracy theories go, is that the NBA was in need of a new kind of superstar, and they kind of created one with Dwayne Wade. That was his coming out party in the NBA Finals. He shot like a record-setting amount of free throws. He averaged crazy numbers, and he won the NBA Finals. And the NBA did not have a very fond relationship with the Dallas Mavericks owner, Mark Cuban, and they did not want him to basically carry their trophy. So he actually hired his own private investigator to do an investigation on this. Yes, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I think he ended up dropping it because he truly does believe that the NBA screwed him out of a title.
Damn.
He got one later when
he
LeBron
still goes on
made
today.
it big.
It was a huge controversy with the Spurs early on in the playoffs this year because Kawhi Leonard was just shooting an absurd amount of free throws.
Yeah,
and they weren't going to win that series anyway. There's no way.
Spurs actually have an official that's not allowed to officiate their games. Is that correct? Or is that still going on?
I don't know.
I have no idea.
I can't remember his name. There's one official, now we're going to put in show notes because I can't remember off the top of my head, where the Spurs are 0-15 when he officiates or some crazy stat I could have sworn.
Holy crap.
I could be completely talking off the top of my head, but there is at least somebody where there was a lot of controversy between he just not So
you're saying is I need to go into officiating and start going to gamble?
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
I was hoping somebody would help me.
All
I
right,
don't
Kate.
fully remember that, but no.
We're past time, Kate.
Yeah.
Let's
wrap this up.
Yeah,
do your nice little rappy stuff.
Yeah, so I think we've covered a lot about the NBA. For you listening out there, this does not mean that we will not talk about some, why the Spurs matter, or why LeBron James matters, or why...
Tim, you coming back for LeBron James matters?
So
no, I'm going ghost.
This is... we've talked about a lot of, I guess you could say, geek culture up until now, and we also want to point out that pop culture is everything, and that everything includes sports. And as you can tell, I have two amazing co-hosts and a lovely Tim who know a lot about sports, and I just really love listening to these conversations. So we'll keep it going. If you have any recommendations, go ahead and comment on this episode. Let us know. As always, rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. That is the easiest way for people to find us, and it helps us out a whole bunch. As always, you can find us on But Why Though PC on Instagram and Twitter. And you can go ahead and find me at Oh My Myth Randier on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. Adrian?
Yeah, you can find me at SuperReese93, SuperRuiz 93 on Twitter.
Matt?
You can find me also on Twitter, retweeting away at DATM18, DATTM18.
And thanks again so much, Tim, for being on this episode. Why don't you go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you on the interwebs.
Thank you for having me, and you can find me on Twitter at TCTaughtMe. That's TSEA Taught Me.
And I will include that in the show notes, so go ahead and drop him a follow. Great night, guys. And I don't have a great NBA sign-off, so Adrian, I hope you have one.
No, there's hats off. By this time this episode comes out,
Can we play the NBA on ABC or NBC Music?
We can.
Space Jam. We'll close it off with Space
Yeah,
Jam.
Asa, get some Space Jam.
We'll do that. So by the time this episode comes out, we should be into the finals, and hopefully LeBron James is winning. Get at us while we're tweeting the finals.
Real quick before we go, so who do you guys have in the finals, and how many games?
I want the Warriors.
LeBron in 6.
In 5.
In 5, wow.
Yeah, LeBron in 6 for me.
I got the Warriors in 6.
All my horses are injured, so I have none in this race.
That's so accurate. All right.
Have a great night, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right, yeah.
Bye.